to another live. Today we are talking about taking breaks from drinking and how that can help you quit for good. And I know that it might feel frustrating when you take a break and then you drink again and then you see that it's actually not different this time and you're beating yourself up for losing your time. But I think that experience is really valuable. And I think for me, I needed the proof that it was never going to change no matter what. And once I had that proof, I could really accept that it was over for me and I couldn't change the way that I drink, and so I just have to quit for good. So if you're in that cycle where you find yourself going back and forth, drinking and taking a break and going back, I would try not to beat yourself up. I know that's hard. I know it's really easy to shame yourself and get down on yourself, but it's all part of the learning process. For me, I was sober curious back, I think in like 2015 was when I really started to be sober curious, and I didn't quit for good until 2019. And my journey was longer than hopefully yours will be because I didn't do anything. I didn't get any support. I didn't look at any sober content. So even just by hanging out with me for this little block of time, you're already doing more than I was. I just stuck to myself and figured I'd try to moderate. And I never sought out any support or listen to other people's experiences. I thought that I was the only one. I thought that I was different. And because I was different from all these alcoholics, I didn't have to get sober. But really, I had no idea what these alcoholic people were like. I was only looking at what we see in the media and what we see on TV, and that's the comparison that I made. So I think that's why it took me so long to really understand that I need to give sobriety a shot, because the only example I had was fake. I was never in the sober community on social media until I was 8 months sober. So I really had no idea about any of this stuff. So you're already doing really good by being here. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer whatever you have. But I would encourage you to take whatever amount of break you feel comfortable with, even if that's just 7 days. My very first break was only 7 days long, and I knew I was going to drink after it. And I did the 7 days, and because it wasn't too hard, I must be fine. So then I went back to drinking. But I still learned a lot from that break, even though I went back to drinking and wouldn't take another break for years. So even if only 7 days is what's comfortable for you, you should just take that and see what happens and see how you feel. For me, a 30-day break, it just felt too long. It felt really scary. I didn't know what I would do with myself. I thought I'd be miserable the entire time. So if that's you, just start with 7 and see what you learn. And then eventually I did 90, and then eventually I just quit for all eternity, which is where I'm at now. If you want to learn more about my experience with breaks, I talked about it in my most recent podcast episode. So I think that's episode 164. If you want to learn about it. Tomorrow is going to be a really good episode too, because I'm talking about my 30-day no sugar challenge. And I know a lot of people were really interested in that and asking me a lot of questions. So tomorrow on my podcast, you're going to learn all the goodies about what happened, what I'm doing now, what I learned, what the benefits were. And then I'm also, of course, because it's me, I'm also explaining the science of it, how how sugar affects your body, how it affects your brain, how it affects your mental health, things like that. So if you're interested in sugar, check out my podcast when you wake up tomorrow. I know some people who are not nice people when they are sober. How do they adapt to sobriety? Some people get sober and they're resentful and unhappy and bitter, and they don't want to do any of the work, and they're mad that they have to do the work. So that's called being a dry drunk, when you don't drink, but then everything else in your life is the same. So that's a dry drunk. And I have a couple episodes on that too, if you scroll my catalog. I think eventually they just have to recognize that work has to be done. I think when you remove alcohol, you see your life for what it is. And I was in shock at how horrible my life was when I removed alcohol and I could see clearly. So I hope that those people will learn. And yeah, alcoholics crave sugar. That I have explained why that happens in episode 41 of my podcast. And then I'm also covering it again briefly in tomorrow morning's episode. So if you're curious why you're craving sugar, it is actually a real thing. There are some myths out there, like we're trying to replace the sugar that was in alcohol, or alcohol is made out of sugar. Those are not true. So check out my podcast to learn the truth. John just celebrated a year yesterday. Congratulations. And you've never felt better. I'm so happy to hear that. A year is such a long time. There's so much healing that happens internally in that first year. So I'm really excited for you. Congratulations. Are there any questions that I can answer for you guys while I'm here? I did get one in my stories that I thought was really cool. I'm wondering if kombucha causes cravings. I had a synergy yesterday and had a craving later. So kombucha has a tiny amount of alcohol in it. Like not enough where you're losing your time or anything like that. It's like a non-alcoholic beer amount. But I've never had one, so I don't know the taste, but I know that sometimes people add wine, so I'm assuming it's kind of like winey. And things that taste similar to alcohol or look similar or smell similar can trigger your brain to think about the real thing. So some people will have a non-alcoholic beer, for example, and they might feel like a fake buzz because the brain is so used to having a regular beer and getting a buzz. Or some people will have a fake beer and they'll have cravings for the real thing. And that's just because the brain associates the taste, the can or bottle or whatever, the smell, the appearance of it with the real thing. So you're kind of confusing your brain there. It works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. So if you had a craving later, then maybe kombucha is not for you. The very first time that I ever had non-alcoholic wine, I felt guilty and I felt like I had done something wrong and lost all my time. And I remember I asked my husband, like, am I okay? Did I mess up? Did I do something wrong? I feel so guilty about having this. And I didn't do anything wrong. It was 0%. It was like wine flavored water. But my mind associates the taste and smell of wine with extreme guilt. So that's why I felt guilty afterwards. I've also had non-alcoholic tequila and very similar experience. I made a fake margarita and I tried it, and then my brain was like, you need to go add more tequila to this and not let your husband see. And it's like, it's literally tequila water. Like there's nothing in it. It's 0%. But my brain was still having the same thoughts because it associated the smell, taste and appearance with the real thing. So that's why that might be happening. I have an episode that goes into this in way more detail. It's episode 77. Are non-alcoholic drinks okay to drink? Any other questions that I can answer for you guys while I am here? Anything else that you need help with? Any other questions that you have? Happy to answer whatever I can. So this is going to be the last call for questions if nobody has anything. Last call. Okay, well, this was a short one. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Bring your questions to the next one. I'm still craving sugar even though I'm 419 days sober. Even after 3.5 years, still craving it big time. I don't think that's something that ever goes away. And I explain that tomorrow morning in my new podcast episode. So if you haven't listened to my podcast, you're really missing out because I work very hard on it. And I think I've answered like basically every question that anyone could ever have about alcohol science. So make sure to check that out. And thank you guys for joining me today. And for those of you that ask questions, thank you. And I will see you in the next live. So I hope you guys have a great day.